Welcome to the Thursday, March 3rd meeting of the Westborough Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting of the Westborough Diversity and Inclusion Committee will be conducted via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Members of the public who wish to access the meeting may do so in the following manner. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. The meeting will be broadcast live in real time via Westborough TV on cable, local cable Verizon Channel 28 and Charter 192, and on their online platforms, westboroughTV.org and youtube.com/WestboroughTV. In the event that we are unable to ensure access in real time for reasons of economic hardship and despite best efforts, we will post on the Westborough TV website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment may do so. Specifically, let's see, this meeting today is not including live public comment, but to contribute to discussion on future agendas, members of the public may send email to our email address at diversity@town.westborough.ma.us or call me, the chairperson, at 508-366-3090. All right, so today we are slated to pick up essentially where we dropped off of our meeting on Monday. It's really nice to see those of you who are joining us today who weren't able to be here on Monday. I hope that you had an opportunity to watch the recording of the meeting. And thank you very much for taking the time to do so. So before we were unfortunately interrupted, we had just heard a motion from Kim Foster. Her initial motion was to support the IPD article, the Indigenous Peoples Day article, that is currently article number 35 on the warrant. So to recap our discussion, it was very nuanced and I really appreciate it. I think everybody is thinking about this very critically. The high points that stand out to me, and please add to it if you think I've missed something, are that there seemed to be a lot of shared agreement that maybe not unanimous agreement, but at least shared agreement that we were leaning towards not supporting the article as written, with the caveat that we absolutely support the adoption of Indigenous Peoples Day as a local holiday on the second Monday of October. But we only support it if it were to replace the Columbus Day holiday. And the way that the current citizen petition article is written, it would leave Columbus Day intact. And so our conversation was about how, yes, that's how we feel. We also recognize the potential impact that this could have in the community of causing confusion. I've heard from residents who signed the petition, including people on this meeting last week who said that they believe they signed the petition, believing in the way that it was written by the petitioner, that it would replace Columbus Day. Now, Lisa Edinburgh, who was the petitioner, did explain to us that she recognized that it would not change anything about Columbus Day when she put it forward. But I have learned since then that there has been confusion by members of the public who did sign that petition understanding differently. So we know that there's confusion. So we know that anything that we say that would potentially not be in support of this article could be taken, badly. But for that matter, anything that we say could be taken, in a hard way by some folks. So we were saying how we were leaning towards not supporting it, but wanting to make some kind of public statement about why and where do we go from here. And we kind of went on a tangent about where do we go from here, and we brought it back to understanding that we can't make that decision now about where this committee goes from here, except to say that we will continue to be in support of adopting Indigenous Peoples Day, and we will continue to explore the ways in which that might happen. Does that feel like an accurate summary of the conversation? Kim?
Yes, I'm just, at this point, I'm questioning a statement as directly that the committee, I'm trying to figure out a way to frame it, that those issues were raised in support and how this is different from the discussions that we had. But I just want to be careful because I don't think at this point, we as a committee have taken a vote to support it. What we did last year and came up with a recommendation and voted to support it. I think what we've done in my mind, and this may be splitting hairs, but we've cited how we believe the petition, I think what we're saying, it doesn't go far enough based on discussions that the committee had last year. But I don't know that I'm comfortable making an affirmative statement of exactly what we want at this time until we've had more discussion, because I feel like that's where we need to, if we're going to come to that conclusion, I feel like we need some more input into that, because we would be right, in my opinion, we would be right back to where we were and some of the things we were criticized for.
May I just clarify what you're saying?
Please help me because I'm struggling.
It's okay. No, I think I get it. I think what you're saying is that we're sort of leaning towards not supporting the article as written. I hear you saying that you're not necessarily comfortable in saying outright we support Indigenous Peoples Day to replace Columbus Day because that was a vote we took last year, and you're saying you want to see more discussion happen before we assume that all of us are on the same page with that.
Yes, I think to me, a statement that we are in support of continued discussion and perhaps a refine, I'm not exactly sure how to frame that, but that we absolutely support continued discussion and input, making it clear that it's a topic that we still have an interest in. But as we mentioned last time, we also wanted to be careful about, we've identified some other priorities. So not trying to put a specific time that we think we would bring this back or have any further discussion, not committing to that. I'm sorry, I know that's not an articulate.
I think it's as articulate as anything we've come up with so far. Alma?
Yeah, I mean, we're being asked to either support the Article 35 on town meeting floor next Saturday or not. We're not being asked to continue our debate, discussion, or whatever. So I think that's the only thing that needs to be in the motion, not whether we're going to talk about this some more next week or next month or in October or whatever, just whether or not we support this particular article the way it's being presented on town meeting floor on the 18th of March.
Yes, that is where we need to start. I would like to have some clarification after such a vote as to how we relay that message of support or non-support to the community at town meeting. What words go with that in addition to we support or non-support. But I do see, yes, we have to vote whether we support or not support first, and that has to be our first step before we can move forward with what we say to accompany that.
So, Cara, the decision seems to be predicated on an assumption that supporting this motion compromises our ability to extend the motion in the future. Is that true? Is that the belief of the committee? And is that in fact true? So for example, if this motion goes through, does it in any way compromise our ability to completely swap Columbus Day for an Indigenous Peoples Day at some time in the future?
I don't know that I don't know. I don't know that it would. I'm not assuming that it would impede our ability to do that in the future. My motivation in bringing this to this group is much like what I said in my statement last week, or on Monday, is about that the leaving Columbus Day intact is contradictory to the recommendation that we made to the select board last summer. And it is because of that contradiction that I, speaking for me, do not feel comfortable supporting the article as it is written. Acknowledging that we have more conversation to have, that we do not want to drop this as an issue. We want to pursue Indigenous Peoples Day as a holiday, but given the impact that this article would have at this time being contrary to our original recommendation, I oppose it.
But the reality is that Columbus Day is a federal institution, a national institution, and nothing can change that beyond operating within the United States government. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that true?
That is true. And the process of individual municipalities changing their local holidays to the extent that they are able, where they do not have to use federal language, it shows the state how much of the population in Massachusetts is serious about this and the ways in which we want to see it happen. So it sends a very clear message to lawmakers. And then, whatever the state hopefully decides at some point will then influence a federal decision on the matter as well. So that is the power of it.
Okay, I understand that premise.
Yeah.
So,
anybody else want to comment on this?
So can I just
go ahead?
Yeah, just to add on to what Ian was saying, I think that's a bit of the challenge here, which is, and I appreciate you sharing the 3 emails from the residents who originally brought this forward to our committee, and they opposed the petition as is presented on the warrant. My struggle with the petition is that it does feel more progressive, not with a capital P, more progressive, and a move toward recognition that this committee has discussed and that many of the residents, including those who support Columbus Day, believe in and want to recognize. And for us to vote against to not support the petition, feels like we're losing any ground that this would hope to achieve. At the same time, my other side of me says, to Ian's point, this Columbus Day just doesn't go away. My problem with the petition as it's written is that it says we're going to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day, but there's no, and so what about Columbus Day? It's sort of like ... It's like the hanging chat. It doesn't sort of resolve it, and it's non-binding. So, to me, it's sort of like, are we trying to, I don't know, do we want to swing for the fence and hope to hit a home run with a new article potentially as a committee to come forward with, and maybe processes and education that we kind of touched on at our last meeting? Or is this base hit, double, whatever the analogy you want to be, a move in the right direction, and then we come back around? Because no one says we can't come back around. So I'll just offer those as simple.
I mean, that's the risk. That's the risk of, certainly there is a risk, and community members have reached out and said this to me, that there's a risk of making a division amongst community members who all share the goal of bringing forward Indigenous Peoples Day. Yeah. And so I think, yeah, just a second. That's just where we have to decide on the nuance of it. I mean, we each vote, right? And we decide as a committee if we're going to support it or not support it. But then depending on where the vote lands, then we also make a statement to accompany it, trying to recognize this nuance. Sarah?
Yeah, so I had a question when Shelby, you mentioned, and I know that it was mentioned in the last meeting as well, that it's not binding. Could you just explain to me what exactly that means, that it's not binding?
Kim or Shelby?
So it doesn't require the town to actually take any action. And as Kim explained in our last meeting, we don't have, recognition of holidays would be in our personnel, is in our personnel policies, but our personnel policies are not part of our bylaws.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no change required in our bylaws. Kim, feel free to jump in here if there's something I'm not representing correctly. So there's not, and that is the other part of this, that there's no, in some ways it largely becomes symbolic and there is no action that's required. Now it could compel an affirmative vote at town meeting, could compel the select board to say, okay, we are going to change this in contracts, for example.
So I'm still trying to understand, though, as a practical impact, how does it being non-binding, is there any example you can give me? I'm just trying to understand how that practically functions.
Sure. I'll jump in. In communities where perhaps the charter or bylaws make reference to Columbus Day, they would need a town meeting vote to make a change to those specific items. Here, we don't have that. So that's the distinction. Where it's binding, there's actually action the town, it would result in that action, change to the charter, change to bylaws. Here, that's not the case. We don't have anything, it would just be asking people to, refer to it as that, but there's no requirement to do so.
Okay. So the way that, I see it is, in general, I feel that the objective of this committee partly is to be changing the mindset and the culture around, these things. I feel as though if, that doesn't preclude us, like Ian may have said, from making any further strides in the future. Meaning it may not be binding in the proposal right now. That doesn't mean that we can't, once people get comfortable with the idea, that you're able to make a proposal to make it binding or change it in the bylaws later. So is that not the case?
There's no reference to it in our bylaws or in the charter. So
okay, so there's no reference to in the name of what is there no reference to? Say it again.
In some communities, their charter or their bylaws will maybe reference specific holidays that the town receive. That's not in this community in Westborough. Our charter, our bylaws do not contain references to specific holidays. So there's nothing there to change. So the fact that it's non-binding doesn't mean we're not changing something that exists. It means.
Okay, so you're saying Columbus Day is not mentioned anyway.
Correct.
Right. So again, then I don't see how that negatively would impact the objective either. So while I completely understand, and I saw the emails as well that came from, community members, and I agree with that. On the other hand, it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. I mean, we, may not have been successful in the last attempt that was made. It's just that we also want to think about, how we can make baby steps in the right direction, as opposed to, I'm not sure how it's going to be interpreted if we outright reject it. I'm not sure that that's going to be in line with what our ultimate objective is. So that's just my opinion.
Thank you. Ian?
Yeah, I think that's a strong point, Sarah. How would this be perceived by the community? Admittedly, we've got 3 people sent emails saying that, we should take a hard line and stick by our guns, as it were. But the rest of the community is going to see the Diversity and Inclusion Committee votes or doesn't support one of those baby steps. And I think that could potentially be very negative.
So All right, I'm gonna throw out I'm gonna throw out a possible option we have that isn't what I would choose. But I just really trying to listen to you and hear what you're saying, and do we instead not vote to support or oppose, but vote to or agree to make a statement about it? So, you know, in town meeting, people talk about articles all the time. I mean, is there a role for us to make some comment? I don't know. I really don't understand all of this. So I don't know. Kim,
I think
what do you think, Kim?
No, go ahead.
I'll start with Kim and then I'll go to Shelby.
I would be opposed to that. I think the committee, as a committee, our vote is our statement. So we either recommend town meeting, and this is what we're recommending town meeting support the article, or and that was the other piece of it. It would be there. I had framed it as in the affirmative, that the vote would be taken to support, and versus framing it the other way. But in my opinion, that's our statement, and that's versus an actual statement. Because I think if you take a vote and you have a yes or a no, then perhaps there's commentary that goes with that, but it's the vote that is our kind of what puts us on record as a committee. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Shelby and then Shazia.
Skip me, go ahead.
Okay, Shazia, go ahead.
What I was going to say is in line with what Kim was trying to say, that we have so many new opinions, emotions, that we definitely need to take into account more things before we can put out a statement or a new petition. I mean, I'm leaning in a certain direction, but I certainly feel like there is more conversation to have. Don't want to rush anything like, we were accused of doing last time. So the only reason I don't want to support this petition is because it clearly isn't what we asked for. And if the community needs a little more time, we need more dialogue to make people understand why, or maybe us, come up with a better solution, then accept something that's half-baked. Not sure if that made any sense.
It did. Thank you. To me. Sarah.
So I see that perspective and I agree with that. And I think part of this is probably because I'm new to the committee. All of that, the dialogue that happened before and all of that, I was not part of. So I think it's much harder for those who have worked so hard on something and then were like, rejected essentially, to come back and be like, okay. I mean, coming from the outside, I just feel as though, again, in the larger picture, we're trying to, work as a community to build tolerance and inclusion amongst, groups and trying to move the community forward in that sense. And I feel as though while in our minds there is this, okay, having it alongside with Columbus Day would be contrary to what was proposed last year. Why is there not a possibility of having a middle ground, or having us move the community in a certain direction, but in a way that they feel comfortable? I mean, a lot of what was, that may have been opposition for an Indigenous Peoples Day at all, or for removing Columbus Day, how do we know how much of that was not fueled by some real, racism or things of that nature? And if that's the case, then, we have to bring everyone on board. And that's also part of the process. So I just, I am in favor. Like, if I were to be asked, I would be in favor of supporting the petition, just because I see it as a move in the right direction. While it's not what we want and it's not the end goal, I definitely see it as a step forward. So.
Shelby.
The one part that I circle back on and happen to be part of that conversation many moons ago with representatives of the movement of Indigenous Peoples Day Massachusetts is the firm assertion and wish of that group that's kind of compelling this movement is to not share the day. And so, it's, let me be very clear. I don't like the language of the petition that is before us, because I would like the middle ground of sharing the holiday. Because I think it's the moderate move forward and it gets us closer to ultimate change of where we need to be. And I don't think that replacing, which is why I originally, why I voted against it ultimately as a select board member. I don't think that we're there as a community yet, but I think recognizing both, I know the arguments against it, is better than not. Having said that, I know it's not what the political movement wants to do. Part of me says, yes, what is, as a town, do we have to follow the wishes of kind of a movement, or can we do what we want, what we feel is best for the town? And to Kara's point, when she talked at the last meeting, I don't think we're there as a whole town to replace. And I think the language in the petition, while vague and leaves Columbus Day hanging out there, is closer to a moderate move toward, it moves us forward in recognizing, giving Indigenous people the recognition that they deserve. It still keeps Columbus Day, on the books, so to speak. And we as a community have to address that, and there will be time to address it. But I don't think that this petition we're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, because if we support the petition, it's against what the movement is. If we don't support the petition, then I think it does send a message from the committee that we're not willing to move forward in a in moderate ways. I will add that Shrewsbury School Committee did vote to recognize both. Grafton, to my knowledge, neither select board had taken votes, but the school committees have. Grafton replaced it. Shrewsbury is sharing.
Yeah, Ian and then Kola.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, Shelby. The fact that our school board has changed their position and the kids are being educated about Indigenous Peoples Day, for them, Columbus Day doesn't exist. And so, we've already started that process of education. And I think that that's something that we as a group can continue. And we can do that in the face of supporting a motion that is perhaps not ideal and not fully aligned with what we believe.
Kola.
Obviously you can't please everyone. So at one hand, we don't want to divide or separate ourselves from the community who wants just the Indigenous people they recognize. And then on the other hand, there's so I was thinking that if we agree to support this article, can we also then make it clear that our ultimate goal will be eventually to, word it nicely, replace Columbus Day? Can we do that?
Well, we could, if we agreed as a group to make such a statement, but to Kim's point at the start of this meeting, do we agree? And I don't think that is, we don't. Shelby just said straight out, that that's not the stance that she's would take at this moment. And so I don't think that we can make that statement now. I would have said yes, but now I understand that we would require more conversation as a committee before we were clearly in consensus about that.
Well, I want to be clear, Kara, just to since I was named, that I'm very willing and interested in working toward that. I don't think we're there as a replace the committee right now.
Okay,
So
thank you for clarifying.
you make a great point of, and yes, we can make a statement. You know, there is an opportunity when this comes up at town meeting that a representative of this committee could make a statement as to our position as to why we, how we voted and why we do or don't. And then members of this committee who don't agree with what would be a majority statement, whether it's absolute or otherwise, can also stand up and say, yes, I'm part of that committee, but this is how I feel.
So I think that we have an opportunity to take an incredibly brave but risky chance by saying that we oppose, and that it is sort of a moral stance. I think I will only speak for myself, but
Kara,
I think just hold on.
We don't have to say we oppose.
I know, but I think I cannot support anything that even implies that it's a shared holiday with Columbus Day. I feel adamantly that I have an obligation to raise the voices of the Indigenous people who aren't at the table having this conversation with us. And the Indigenous people who've spoken to us, Matawi, on behalf of a movement of Indigenous people who are working towards this, I cannot in good conscience support the article that even implies that it's a shared holiday with Columbus Day. I am not a resident of Westborough. Many of you are. I want to just acknowledge that wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely encourage you to vote what is your belief and your heart and what you think is right for this town. And just want you to know where my stance comes from.
But Kara, I don't think we need to oppose. I think we need to say that we do not support the article as written at this time. I mean, I think oppose puts a negative spin on it.
Okay.
And it's not that we're trying to be negative and that it will never be discussed again. It's just, as this article is written, we can't support it, or we can,
Okay.
whatever we want to do.
That's helpful. That's a helpful reframe of looking at as a vote of non-support as it stands versus an opposition. Yeah, thank you. Are we at a point where we can entertain a motion?
Yep, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
Yes, please.
I'd move, and I'm going to frame it this way. I move that the committee vote to recommend town meeting support Article 35. It is Article 35. Indigenous Peoples Day.
Do I have a second? Sarah, thank you. All right, further discussion before we take a vote. Shelby?
So I would be I would be interested to I guess understand just through this discussion if in our vote of support that if we still desire as a committee to make a statement on town meeting floor.
I guess not knowing the outcome of the vote, I'm not clear. I think that's perhaps discussion to have after the vote.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
As long as we can have that here.
And as long as the contents of that discussion can be added to whatever statement we end up making, because just a vote of acceptance or support or not is not really meaningful. It's the information that goes with that I think is going to be important.
Sort of like the italicized part of the article.
Well, that's kind of part of the reason I want to get to the vote now, so we can figure out what we're going to be making a statement about.
All right. I'll wait till we get to that point. Okay.
All right. Any other comments before I go for a vote? All right. So the motion on the floor is for our committee to support Article 35 at town meeting on March 19th. So a yes vote means that you do support, you are in agreement that our committee will publicly support Article 35 going forward. Yeah.
Can I clarify?
Yeah.
I see that it's the recommendation for town meeting to support.
Thank you. A
IP.
recommendation for town meeting to support. Okay, so that's the motion. A yes vote is that you are saying, yes, this committee should recommend town meeting to support Article 35. That's a yes vote. All right, I'm going to go around and do a roll call. Shelby? You're muted, just so you know.
Sorry about that. That wasn't intentional. I said I don't know.
I'll come back to you. Cola?
No.
Sarah Willoughby?
No.
Alma?
No.
Kim?
No. Foster, no.
Sarah Shamsudden?
Sorry, no.
Shelby?
No.
Ian?
I'm as conflicted as everybody. I'm going to vote yes, because I think that we can layer onto this our intention to continue the fight.
We'll continue the discussion in just a minute, and I'd love to hear from you. We'll continue the vote right now. Shazia?
Got it. No.
And Presley, no. So that's 8 no's and 1 yes. It's a really hard decision, I feel. I know that this is a really tough one. Ian, I welcome your comments.
Yeah, so thanks. As I said, I'm as conflicted as everybody, but I fear that the perception that this committee voting against the proposal or not supporting the meeting in support of the proposal will be perceived as a negative. I think that we need to make clear that we are and have the intention and resolve to continue to fight to extend this position, but to not take this little step would be to compromise our credibility.
Sarah Willoughby?
I agree. I think I was really on the fence too, because I see the good in both sides. But I think our vote of no really needs an explanation, because I think even as a teacher in town, it's going to come off as, well, do they really not support this idea? So I think we really need to be clear about, we don't support it as written now and why we don't.
There's a request from Sarah asking if there's an opportunity to change her vote. I don't know honestly how that works. Not, you can't change your vote on the motion that just went forward. If you care to put in a different motion and to see if there'd be a second, we could certainly consider that.
But Sarah, you can also, comment as, so that is kind of part of the meeting record.
Yeah. Logistically, how does it work to, what steps do we make from this moment forward to come up with a statement that we would all agree on? Kim?
My concern is we're talking about coming up with a statement. I think our record is the discussion we had up preceding the vote. And the only thing I am comfortable with at this point is if we maybe indicate something along the lines of, in discussing whether the committee would support this citizen petition or not, there were a number of points raised in the committee's extensive discussion that resulted in the committee believing this warranted further. I don't know if we want to say further consideration or I guess the things I would highlight are that, some of the points that were raised by various committee members, because we did not as a committee as a whole vote on each of these points. It was what was raised in our discussion, and different things had different weight or have different weight for each of us. So I think bulleting out that this leaves Columbus Day on the table, concern about potentially some ambiguity in the warrant article compared to what people may have expected or anticipated would result, that it's non-binding. I think there's a few items, but I just want to be very careful in making it come across that this was the consensus of the committee. These were various opinions expressed by members of the committee in the discussion that preceded the vote.
I really appreciate that. It says that we're not all 100% thinking about this the same way. And part of that is why we recognize we need to continue considering this. Shelby?
Well, I guess I'm wondering if, it's March 3rd, town meeting isn't until the 19th. We still have time to craft a statement that we could all agree with. If we wanted to beyond, Kim, to your point, we had extensive discussion. I think the points you made are very, kind of generic, and it recognizes that there's still work to be done, and this committee sees itself as playing a role in that, without being specific as to what kind of work and, what our position would be. So the sort of the easy way to do it would be a 1-paragraph statement to that effect, and we don't elaborate on any of these other points. But I believe we have time to do that, and I'm sure that there are people willing to craft that, and we could come back and agree to, vote support or not of a more elaborate statement that could be read.
It's funny you should say that.
Let's do Alma first and then Ian. That's okay.
I think first of all, we are predicating our discussions on the fact that somebody's going to ask us to make a statement about this. Maybe nobody will. But the other part of it is too that we can say in our statement, if somebody asks, that we have, because of the work we did prior to this, we feel that, there were so many points or whatever that were inconsistent with the knowledge that we gained from talking to stakeholders and all of this, that, we just we're not abandoning the discussion. We just don't feel that this particular article is the way that it should go. I don't know. I don't think this isn't the end of the discussion, obviously, but like I said, we learned things in our discussions with Matawi and some of the others that we talked to that, maybe Lisa didn't have access to or whatever. So, we're basing our decision on, and well, most of us, I think, but we're basing our decision on what we already learned from before, not what's sitting right here in front of us this minute. So.
Ian, did you want to comment?
Just briefly, I think that having a statement that's clear and succinct that puts our position is absolutely essential. And in fact, in a spare moment, I started to draft one that was in direct opposition to the way I voted, because that's the level of confliction. But I do think that we need to explain ourselves.
So, what do you think about a couple of us working on drafting a potential very short, simple statement along the lines of what Kim proposed, and having a short meeting reconvening of this group before the 19th? No, Kim, what are your thoughts?
No, I'm just I'm just looking at the calendar. I know we have time, but we don't have a lot of time. I guess I'll just state right now, I am only comfortable. I don't think we as a committee all share this. There are a number of reasons that were expressed why I think we got to our votes for different reasons. And I'm concerned about any statement that is too narrow and makes it seem like the committee, we all had the same reason. And Ian, I don't think that's what you're suggesting. I'm just more comfortable in something that recognizes that there were various opinions that resulted in a vote. And I'm fine if we bullet them out, but I think it's incredibly important that whatever is discussed is pulled from the conversation, almost, so that somebody could read the minutes later on and see where whatever comments are made in that statement, they can see some reflection of that in the minutes.
Shelby, then Ian, but just wanting you all to know that I have a hard stop in 6 minutes. Shelby.
So very quickly, I think that in the interest of time, I'm going to retract kind of what I suggested before. I think we have a simple statement that says, after much deliberation, we voted not to support the petition as written, and that we recognize that further work is needed on this topic, and the committee is committed to that work. Something to that effect. We appreciate the spirit in which it was brought forward by the petitioner.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. I don't think that we need to point to the fact that there was disagreement within the committee, because I honestly don't think there was significant disagreement. There may have been some finesse points that we would have talked about differently, but I think that we are in agreement. And I think the sort of summary that Shelby's just described is the way we should present our opinion.
I'm comfortable with that. Is anyone opposed to that? Nicola, you had a comment.
I kind of agree with Kim that it shouldn't come out as that it was a unanimous rejection of the whole article. So like wording it in a way that, that we did have conflicting arguments and opinions, and, this is what we came with. And then the wording of the article was in such a way which we do not understand or we do not agree with. So just don't make it sound like that we anonymously disagree to the whole, to the whole article. But we are standing behind the, like, in the future, working towards and like educating and working towards whatever we have proposed before.
So I am imagining, with that in mind, tweaking Shelby's statement to say, after much deliberation, comma, with varied opinions, comma, we voted not to support this, recognizing that further work is needed, with a plan to continue this conversation, or something like that. So just adding in that piece about with varied opinions expressed. Okay.
I don't want varied opinions to sound as if there were disagreement.
To me, varied actually sounds like individualized rather than conflictual, but I'm open to other words.
Yeah, Ian, in fairness, I don't know that we're all, I mean, as Kim stated before, I don't know that we're all coming at this from the same view and perspective and, you know, kind of who we feel we're representing and those, so, and again, I know Carrie, you got to run, so go ahead, Kim, sorry.
Sorry, does this help? A number of points expressing varied opinions were raised during the discussion. I don't want to get crazy with the wordsmithing, but I think I understand the nuance that we might be trying to.
I think that we were thoughtful, there was lots of discussion, and the work needs to continue is really what, and that I think it's important to thank Lisa, because I'm certainly thankful that she's brought this forward, that this just didn't kind of not proceed, but that we have work to do as a committee and as a community. And we're committed to that work as a committee. We're playing a role in that work again.
And just to reiterate, residents certainly have the ability to stand up and clearly acknowledge that while you're a member of the committee, if you wish to express a different view or additional detail about your view, making it clear you're representing your own personal view at that point and not the committee's view necessarily, you can certainly provide more detail. You can speak at town meeting on the topic.
Yeah. I've also been looking at some of the statements of reconciliation and acknowledgement that have been generated in New Zealand, Australia, and Canada. And I think that there's a sentence or two that we can add to the beginning of our position that's crafted from one of those, or a synergy, an assembly of them, which shows our recognition, acknowledgement, and respect for the Indigenous people of this place on whose land we are. And if we put that at the beginning of our statement, I think that will soften any position or misinterpretation of our position.
I like that.
I like that.
I think we can almost effectively agree with that. I suspect Lisa will provide a presentation to town meeting. I don't know for fact, but she raised that in hers. And I think if we show concurrence with that viewpoint of hers, if she makes it, yeah, I think there's a lot of value in that. I like that.
Would you be willing to send to me one of those or a couple of those phrases, and I'll add that to the statement we just created together?
Sure. I have them in front of me if you'd like to hear them, but
I can't now because I really have to call for a
you've
motion.
got a bus to catch, I know.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
So we don't need, I'm sorry, do we don't need a
Thanks.
motion to proceed with the statement and allow a couple people to write that?
Certainly.
I don't think we need to, but
Okay.
I think, you know, Kara, I don't want to put writing that just on you. So
Well, it's already written, really, so it's no big deal. But I will entertain such a motion if there is opposition or a desire for further discussion on it.
So I'd like to make a motion that Kara, Ian, and Paula work on a statement on behalf of the committee.
Cola, did I hear you volunteering for that?
Well, she offered some great points, so I figured.
Would anyone second that motion?
Second.
Okay, Alma. Shelby, vote.
Yes. Marshall, yes.
Sarah Wilby.
Wilby, yes.
Alma.
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
Sarah S.
Yes.
Ian.
Yes.
Cola.
Rashid, yes.
Shazia.
Yes.
Presley, yes. All
Motion
right.
to adjourn.
Motion accepted. Second.
Second.
Shelby, thank you. Okay, Shelby, vote.
Yes. Marshall, yes.
Sarah Wilby.
Willoughby, yes.
Alma.
Yes.
Kim.
Foster, yes.
Sarah S.
Yes.
Ian.
Yes.
Cola.
Rashid, yes.
Shazia.
Yes.
And Presley, yes. You all are awesome. and I am off to facilitate a program